Welcome to the Aligned Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Pooja Venkatraman. I'm a double Harvard grad, former BCG consultant, and now an executive coach for high achievers. On this podcast, we are going to tackle the 4 key things that you need to figure out in order to live a life of aligned ambition. Those 4 things are stress, productivity, performance, and purpose. We are going to make sure that you're driving your car in the direction that you actually want to go. That is the purpose part. We're also going to make sure that your progress along the road is consistent and effective. That's the productivity and performance part. And we're going to make sure that the fuel you're pouring into your tank isn't so noxious that it's filling your car with fumes and making the whole ride miserable. That is the stress part. Because if you can tackle those 4 things, stress, productivity, performance, and purpose, you can build the life and the career that you actually want. Not the life you think you're supposed to have, not the life that burns you out or doesn't fit quite right, but the life you actually want. One that fulfills your biggest ambitions and unleashes your fullest potential without sacrificing your sanity, your relationships, your authenticity, or your paycheck. A life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. That's what aligned ambition is all about. Let's get started. Hey guys, today we are talking about the stress component of living a life of aligned ambition out of stress, productivity, performance, and purpose. Today we are zooming in on stress, and I'm going to talk about 5 ways to toggle your brain from a stress state to a flow state. And by the time you're done, I'm going to give you everything you need to literally build a custom playbook for you. Right? So that you will have the specific things in these 5 categories that you can do to toggle your brain from stress to flow whenever you need it. So you're going to walk out of this podcast episode with a playbook for yourself, and I'll share my playbook with you as well. But first, let me talk about why the stress component is so important. The state of mind that you are in, right? Whether your brain is in a stress state or a flow state is, I think, the most important component of living a life of aligned ambition, doing the big things that you want to do, not burning yourself out while you do them, and doing them your way, right? In the way that you want to do them. So you can see this framework that's floating next to me. It's always floating next to me: circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result, right? And there are thousands of thoughts that you have in a day. There's dozens of feelings that you might have in a day. So many actions, so many outcomes and results, etc. But I think at the end of the day, if you look at this little loop, right? Thought, feeling, action, result, this little loop, I think all these loops that you can find yourself in, broadly speaking, fall into 2 broad categories, right? And I'll call one of them stress and one of them flow, right? Or you could also think of it as like being in fight or flight, feeling threatened versus being not in fight or flight, being secure, feeling unthreatened and feeling secure, right? So very broadly speaking, there's 2 broad categories your thoughts and feelings tend to fall into. Either you are feeling insecure, feeling fearful, feeling stressed, feeling like you're in fight or flight, feeling like you're not good enough, like you're not safe, right? There's kind of that category. And then the other category is you're in flow, you're feeling secure, you're feeling safe, you're not in fight or flight, you're calm. So broadly speaking, you can think of it as the threatened and unthreatened, right? Or insecure or secure. Those are the 2 broad states of mind that people tend to be in, right? And with all the nuances of all the specific thoughts and emotions that you could be feeling, broadly speaking, there's those 2 categories. And which of those 2 categories you're in, right? Which headspace you're in, whether you are in a threatened headspace or an unthreatened, calm, powerful headspace, right? That singular variable determines like 80 to 90% of your results, if not 100% of your results. And this is a really common fallacy that I see where people get really focused on the actions, on the action line, right? And so your tendency, my tendency too, right? It's a human tendency, is to be like, tell me what I need to do. Just tell me what I need to do to get to where I want, right? If you're at an inflection point and you want to level up your performance, you're like, well, tell me what I need to do to get promoted to VP or to operate like a VP. Tell me what I need to do to close the sale as a consulting partner, right? Whatever it might be, right? Or if you're in a decision point, right? It'll be like, well, tell me what I need to do. Tell me an exercise, give me a reflection, give me a workbook, something so I can make this decision. Or if you're in a transition, it's like, okay, well, tell me like how to do my interviews, how to network, right? How to send these outreach emails. Just tell me what to do. That's the temptation, right? It feels like the solution is in the action line of this framework. And if someone could just tell you what to do, you'd be set. By the way, I fell into this fallacy for quite a while in my business, right? And I've only in the last few months caught onto myself that I was doing this. I was in such a search for strategy and advice. And I just was looking at different coaches, different kind of like things, branding agencies, et cetera. And I was really on a hunt for like, someone tell me what I need to do. Tell me what I need to do to grow my audience, get more clients, grow my revenue. Like there's some missing piece. I just need somebody, I need an authority figure I need an expert to come in and tell me what to do. And the thing I've realized, right, is that someone can tell you what to do and they might have a beautiful blueprint and it might have worked really well for them and it might have worked well for a ton of people and that's all great. The actions are not the secret, right? Because even if I were to give you or someone were to give you the exact actions that they did or that they suggest for you, at the end of the day, those actions are not tailored to your situation, to your strengths, and to your analysis of what's going on and what you think is appropriate. Right? So even the most perfect action plan can't be customized so perfectly to your situation. Your situation's always unique. And you are the one executing the actions, right? And so especially when it comes to things that involve other human beings, right? Like communication and meetings and interviewing and marketing and sales and all these things, you can tell when someone's just robotically following a script. Right. And the other person experiences how you're feeling as you're doing the actions. And so you can perfectly execute a sales script or perfectly execute an interview story or perfectly write the perfect networking follow-up email or whatever it might be. Right. The actions are kind of hollow. The actions get infused with how you're feeling. Right. And there's also, like I was saying, nothing is perfectly custom fit. Stuff is always going to happen that you're going to have to react to in the moment. Right. And no one can give you the perfect actions for that. So the solution is not in the action line. The solution is in the thoughts and feelings line. It all comes down to what headspace are you in? And can you keep yourself in a unthreatened, non-fight or flight, secure headspace? Because when you are in that headspace, when you're coming from those thoughts and feelings, right? Things like I'm capable, I've got this. I know I'm going to figure this out. I know I have something to offer that people want. I know that I can do this, right? Whatever the thoughts are and the feelings are the most important part. Security, power, calm, capability, right? Those are the curiosity. Those feelings are what will power your actions, right? When you're in that headspace, when you're thinking those thoughts and feeling your feelings, your brain will generate an action plan. Your brain will have a suggestion. Your automatic brain will say, oh, well, if I'm thinking I'm capable and I got this and I'm feeling confident and I'm feeling secure and I'm feeling powerful and I'm feeling curious and I'm feeling courageous. I have a client where one of the emotions they really like to try to access is playful. So of course, it's an emotion that works really well for them and generates all kinds of great, interesting actions, right? And effective actions. So whatever is the emotion that you kind of tap into, that's a powerful, secure emotion, right? Your brain will generate an action plan out of that emotion. And that action plan is the one that's going to get you where you want to go. And the one that will allow you to iterate, right? The action plan might not be perfect, but if you stay in the unstressed, secure headspace, you'll also be able to iterate on your action plan and figure out, oh, okay, this is what I need to adjust. This is what's not working, et cetera. And stay in process problem mode, like we talked about in the last episode. So all of this is just a prologue to say, this, I think, is the vast majority of what determines the vast majority of your success in living a life of aligned ambition. It's the stress component. It's not the action plan. It's not the tactics of productivity and performance. It is the headspace that you are in that is generating your action plans, that is evaluating your results, and that is iterating on what you're going to do next. It's all about that headspace, right? And can you stay in a non-threatened, non-fight or flight, secure, calm headspace, not a stressed out one? So that's the prologue for why this is really freaking important. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you the 5 categories of ways that you can toggle your brain from a stress state to a flow state, right? From an insecure fight or flight state to a secure non-fight or flight state. So I'm gonna give you the 5 categories first. Then I'm gonna talk about the 2 different kinds of scenarios where you have to use these 5 types of tactics. And then I'm gonna give you an example of my literal playbook. These are the tactics for the 2 scenarios that I use. And then I'm gonna invite you to make your own playbook using everything I've talked about. So first off, here are the 5 categories. I'm gonna give you the overview, then I'm gonna explain what each of them mean. So the 5 categories, the 5 ways that you can toggle your brain from stress to flow, from insecure to secure, right? From fight or flight to non-fight or flight. The 5 categories are top down, bottoms up, outside in, wrap around, and do it now. I know you don't know what any of those mean yet, okay? I just wanted to give you the overview of the 5. I'm going to go into each of them in full detail. Don't even worry. Okay, so the first kind of way to toggle your brain, top down. Right? So what this means is changing your thoughts, changing your mindset, right? So literally from the top down, you're putting a new thought in your brain, and then that's changing how you feel in your body and resulting in new actions, right? And so that is you finding a new perspective on the situation, a new way of looking at it, a new thought, a new perspective that then shifts how you feel. Let me give you some examples. These are examples of real thoughts that I've worked with clients to develop that have been really helpful in snapping them out of it, right? Immediately toggling their brain from a fight or flight state to a non-fight or flight state. One example is I was working with someone who is a management consultant, and they were feeling a lot of pressure to know all the answers, right? Which is very normal, right? Clients pay a lot of money for you to be there, and they have all kinds of questions. You're expected to be the expert, and she was feeling really stressed out about there's so many things I don't know, and I'm really afraid of being caught out, right? And the thought suggestion that we worked on and the new perspective that she implemented was, my job isn't to know everything. My job is to get up to speed as quickly as possible. That's it. Super simple. It's not rocket science. It's just a different way of looking at what does success look like here? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I measure myself? Right. And as soon as she toggled from my job is to know everything, right? Very stressful standard of success that she usually felt like she was failing on. When she toggled to, oh, my job is to get up to speed as quickly as possible, her brain was like, yeah, I can do that. That's doable. I can get an A at that standard of success. And it makes sense. It makes sense for the situation. It's not reasonable to expect myself to know everything, right? That's an example of a top-down thought flip that immediately put her system into a different state. I'll give you one more example, right? This was also someone who was doing sales. And so they were having sales conversations. They were feeling awkward about them. They didn't like having them. They felt like, I'm being sleazy and doesn't feel good. And the thought suggestion that I gave them was don't worry about selling the whole thing you're trying to sell. Sell the next step. Sell one more conversation. Sell, let's get a little bit of time to talk about this. Sell, let me put a proposal together and let's chat, right? Sell the next step. Don't sell the whole thing, right? And I gave them the analogy of don't try to go from the first date to getting married. Go from date 1 to date 2. And they were like, oh, I can do that. I can go from date 1 to date 2. Felt crazy to try to go from date 1 to marriage, but I can sell the next step, right? That's very doable. So those are two examples of top-down interventions, right? So new thoughts, new perspectives about your situation that toggle your brain from stress to flow, right? So that's category 1 of the types of interventions, the types of things that can flip your brain from stress to flow, top down, new thoughts, new perspectives. That's category 1. Category 2, bottoms up. Okay, this is now you, same thing, still your physical body. Now you're changing the state of your body, right? You're changing your physical state in order to toggle your system from stress to flow, right? So these can be things like working out, yoga, doing deep breathing, taking a walk, any of these things which are a physical thing. Tapping, I know some people are into tapping. And so these are things where you're doing something physical, right? You're not changing your thoughts in your brain. You're doing something to your body, getting a massage, doing a dance workout, whatever it might be, right? Doing some jumping jacks, but you're doing something to change the physical state of your body. And that your body and your brain are in a feedback loop, right? And so you can, if you're in the stress loop, if you're in the fight or flight loop, you can break the loop from the brain or from the body. Both of them work, right? You can break the loop at either place. And so top down is about breaking the loop in your brain by putting a new thought, a new perspective about the situation into your brain that then gets a different feedback loop going. But you can break it in your body, right? You can do bottoms up and you can say, I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to do some deep breaths. I'm going to do some yoga. I'm going to do some tapping, whatever it might be. You do something to change the physical state of your body. That also breaks the loop, right? And so that by changing the physical state of your body, that can then toggle your whole system out of fight or flight and into flow or into a secure state, right? So that's category 2, bottoms up. Category 3 of interventions, I call this outside in, right? This is all about environment design. This is about the things that are around you, the circumstances that are around you, and using those to help put your brain and put your system into a different state, right? And so I'll give some examples of this. This is like having a clean workspace, keeping clutter away, putting things away, having some people like to go co-working. They like to have other people around them that are also working. That makes them feel like, okay, it's time to work, versus if they're by themselves, they don't kind of get into that productive headspace. So this is all, or it could even be something as simple as I go to sleep in my workout clothes. And so then I wake up and it's frictionless to go work out because I'm already wearing my workout clothes, right? So this is environment design, architecting your external circumstances such that they tend to put your brain into a non-fight or flight state, right? Because yes, our circumstances are neutral, right? And we're having thoughts about them, right? That's what gives our circumstances meaning, is the thoughts that we have about them. They don't have any meaning in and of themselves. And at the same time, your brain is pretty reactive to circumstances, right? And your brain has predictable reactions to the circumstances around you. This is why I keep my workspace pretty clean and pretty clear, because if I see a lot of clutter, I'm going to want to go clean up the clutter, right? And I'm going to get distracted, or I'm going to feel kind of like, oh, there's so much stuff going on. I feel like I can't focus, right? That's a very predictable reaction that my brain has to circumstances. And so if you ever are in my office or in my apartment or in my bedroom, you'll notice everything's very clean and tidy and everything's put away because it calms me down. I feel better. I feel stressed out if there's too much stuff, going on around me, visually, that I can see. So that's the third intervention that you can use to toggle your brain from stress to flow is outside in, right? Environment design. Put yourself in a different set of circumstances or change the circumstances around you based on the predictable ways that your brain tends to react to certain circumstances. That's intervention number 3. Intervention number 4 is called wraparound, right? And so this is the concept behind a lot of mindfulness meditation practices. And so the concept of wraparound is you're not trying to change. So if you're watching the video, I'm doing a little visual, right? You're not trying to change your current thoughts and feelings, right? So everything else so far, top down, right? New thoughts, bottoms up, kind of doing something physical, outside in, changing your environment, right? All of those were aimed at changing your thoughts and feelings, right? Changing the state that you are in, getting yourself out of the fight or flight and into the flow or the secure state. All of those were aimed at changing it. Wraparound, not aimed at changing anything. Right? And what you do with wraparound is just like with a mindfulness meditation, you feel your stress, your anxiety, your overwhelm, your inadequacy, your humiliation, your frustration, your anger, whatever that like fight or flight threatened state might be. You feel it. You're not even trying to change it. All you're doing is changing your position relative to it. And you are going into the observer position, right? So instead of being in the middle of all those thoughts and feelings and believing them and building on them and being in the middle of the storm, you're stepping out and you're being like, those are some thoughts that I am having. And these are some emotions that are going through my system, right? If you've ever done a mindfulness meditation, like in Headspace or Calm, they'll often use this type of language where they'll say, imagine that you're lying on a mountainside and every thought that goes by is a cloud and there's a thought and there's a thought and there's a thought. And sometimes people will add on something like focusing on your breath, right? And the reason they have you focus on your breath or focus on a mantra or focus on a sensation is because they're trying to pull you out of being in the middle of the storm of thoughts and feelings. And they're trying to get you to that observer position, right? So that you can be outside of all the thoughts and feelings. So I call that wraparound, right? Because we're not changing the actual thoughts and feelings. We're not even trying to change the state. We're just changing the wraparound layer, right? We're kind of saying, okay, this is happening. This is currently happening. These are the thoughts that are coming through my brain. These are the emotions that are coming through my system. These are the sensations that are happening, the sentences that are happening, the scenarios that are flashing through me. Okay, I'm just watching it all happen. I'm separating myself. I'm going to a place of neutral awareness. I'm not trying to run away from it. I'm not trying to change it. I'm just neutrally watching it all play out, right? That's wraparound. Like I said, a lot of mindfulness meditation, that's the principle or the philosophy underneath it. So that's wraparound. Way number 4, intervention number 4 to toggle your brain from stress to flow, from fight or flight to not fight or flight. I'll talk a little bit more about why that works a little bit later, but that's intervention number 4. And then intervention number 5, I call it do it now. And this is just taking a series of actions. Right? Just being like, when I'm in a stressed out state, there's a certain set of things I'm going to do, or to prevent getting into that state, there's just things I'm going to do. This could be like, I have a structured morning routine. If I have a really big task, I schedule meetings with somebody else to break that task down into smaller pieces. If I get really overwhelmed, I call somebody and I talk out like whatever it is that I need to do. But you just have a action plan. Or I have another great one that I've used for kind of procrastination, which is I'm just going to get started. And if I still don't feel like doing it after 15 minutes, then I can stop. So my like action plan, my do it now is like get started, set a 15-minute timer. If you still don't want to do it after 15 minutes, then you can stop, right? That's another like tactical kind of do it now type of intervention. And so these are all things where it's not environment design, right? It's not outside in where you're setting up your circumstances in a certain way. Instead, it's kind of action design, right? It's like do it now. Here's like a simple set of concrete actions that I just go ahead and do. And that's intervention number 5 that can toggle your brain from stress to flow, right? Because often I can kind of get overwhelmed and not want to get started. But if I just get started for 15 minutes, usually my brain calms down and kind of gets into the task and I'm totally okay, right? Or if I'm like feeling really overwhelmed and it's hard for me to figure something out, talking it out with somebody else makes like immediately calms my system down and then I can usually figure it out. So these are actions, specific actions that you can take that tend to kind of pull your brain from stress to flow. Okay, so those are the 5 broad categories of things that you can do that will toggle your brain from stress to flow, right? Just to recap them, there's top down, right? Which is changing your thoughts to then change your whole system state. There's bottoms up, which is changing the state of your body, right? Doing something physical to change your state. There's outside in, changing your circumstances, changing your environment to change how you're feeling, change your state. There's wraparound, which is using kind of mindfulness meditation techniques, going into a place of neutral awareness and observation of what's going on in your system rather than just being in the middle of it. And then the last category is do it now, just having tactical, concrete actions that you take that that kind of toggle your brain from stress to flow. So those are the 5 categories. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about like the 2 types of situations that you need to plan for, right? So even as I'm talking through these 5 categories, you probably already started having some ideas for, oh yeah, these are the kinds of things that I could put, in each of these categories that work well for me. Here are some thoughts that help me. Here are some bottoms up things that help me. I had a client once that did a lot of yoga. And so like part of her yoga practice was very critical to her kind of maintaining, staying in a flow state and not getting too stressed. You might have had some ideas of, oh, here's the environment design things for me. Here's the mindfulness practice for me. Here's my action plan. You might have already had some ideas. So here I'm going to help you make your playbook even more sophisticated, because there's the 5 types of interventions. Then there's the 2 types of situations that you need these interventions for. And I'm going to call them preventative versus curative, right? And so, or like you could think of it as proactive versus reactive. Basically, what that means is there's the types of interventions you do that are to prevent your brain from even going into a stressed out state to begin with, right? To just prevent your brain from even going into fight or flight, right? That's one category. So it hasn't happened yet, but you kind of do these things in a preventative way, and it tends to keep your brain out of the fight or flight. That's one category. The second category is the curative or the reactive things, where it's like when your brain goes into fight or flight, which will inevitably happen, right? Your brain is inevitably going to go into a stress state at some point because of something that happened during the day, right? It will happen. There's a set of interventions that you can also design that's like, okay, when it happens, when my brain's in that headspace, here's things in each of these 5 categories that I can do to pull myself out of it, right? So those are the other 2 kind of things to think about. You have the 5 types of interventions, and then the 2 scenarios that you want to use them in. The preventative scenarios, right, where you're like, this prevents my brain from even going into fight or flight in the first place, or reduces the chances that it will, versus the curative ones where you're like, when it inevitably goes into fight or flight, here's my like game plan. Here's my playbook of things I can do to pull myself back out of it. Right. So those are the 2 categories that you want to think about. And let me just kind of elaborate on that a little bit with the analogy of a chemical reaction, because I found this really helpful to me when I was thinking about, my brain going into fight or flight. Because I think it's very easy to realize, right? We come to the realization of like, oh, I'm less effective when I'm in a threatened state. I'm less effective when I'm stressed or when I'm in fight or flight. And then it's very easy for me to almost have mindset perfectionism, right? And to be like, well, if it's less effective for me to be in fight or flight, I should just never feel that way. And like, stupid brain, stop doing that. Stop getting anxious. Stop getting stressed. You're just an idiot. Stop it. Right? Which doesn't help. If you're stressed, if you call yourself an idiot and tell yourself not to be stressed, I guarantee you only are going to get more stressed. It has never once made me feel better to say that to myself. But it's very easy to think that way when you are just almost thinking mathematically about it, right? Where you're like, well, it's less effective to be stressed out and to be in fight or flight, so I should just not do that. And I should be annoyed at myself when I'm feeling that way. That was not a helpful way for me to think about it. So this analogy of the chemical reaction really helped me, right? And the way I think about it is there are some things where your brain doesn't have the chemical reaction about them, right? You might see, like sometimes I can see a thought float by and I can kind of be like, oh, I'm just not going to choose that thought, right? Like, I might have the thought float by, which is like, oh, like nobody wants coaching. And I can see it. I can see that my brain is like offering me that thought, but I don't believe it, right? I don't feel the emotional reaction of that thought. I just like see the sentence floating by in my brain. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just not going to choose that thought. Like that's not a helpful thought, right? So sometimes sentences or ideas will float by you, but you won't have the emotional reaction, right? And it's very easy then to just be like, okay, I'm just not going to follow the thread of that thought. I'm just not going to do that. But sometimes, right, your thoughts will hit you and the emotional reaction will hit before you even have any idea what's going on, right? And a lot of times in those situations, you might not even know what the thought is because the thought happened unconsciously, right? It's an unconscious thought or association or conclusion that your brain drew. And the emotional reaction got kicked off and now you've got all the feelings, right, happening internally. And so when that happens, right, when it's not just a sentence passing through, but you don't really feel the emotion, it's just a little detached sentence, but when the emotions hit, right, when the feelings have happened, that's what I think of as that's a chemical reaction that's gotten started. So have you ever seen those like chemical reaction GIFs like online? You'll usually see like a scientist that's like pouring a beaker of a chemical into another beaker. And then there's a big like fizzing like reaction or something, right? And with a chemical reaction, once it gets started, you can't stop it midway through, right? It just has to like fizz and like bubble and like, overflow. And then it has its own like rhythm to it, right? Where it'll like overflow, and then it'll kind of calm down and go away. And that's how I think about an emotional reaction internally. Right? If a thought has entered my brain, if my brain has made some sort of unconscious conclusion and I'm feeling the emotion, right? Which means the emotional chemical reaction has gotten started. Now we're in a different realm, right? Because now the reaction's already gotten started. And now what I have to do is let it safely fizzle out, right? So there's no point in saying, oh, I wish this hadn't started. I wish this wasn't happening. I shouldn't be feeling this way. If I'm feeling the feeling, if the emotion has gotten started, game over, right? Like there's no point in saying, I wish it hadn't happened, because the emotional reaction, the chemical reaction, right, to give that analogy, has already gotten started. And that's why in the curative category, it's all about just saying, okay, it's already gotten started. How do we let it safely fizzle out, right? Versus the preventative category is all about, how do we not get the chemical reaction started in the first place? The chemical reaction is going to happen, right? Your brain is always scanning for threats and trying to keep you safe. And so it will encounter things and it will decide this is a threat, and it'll kick off an emotional reaction, a fight or flight reaction. And that internal chemical reaction is going to happen. That's throughout the day, not even a problem, right? But it's helpful to kind of realize, okay, that's going to happen. And so I have two categories of interventions. I have the preventative ones that try to make fewer and fewer of those chemical reactions even happen in the first place. And then the curative ones, which are like, when the reaction happens, as it's inevitably going to happen, right? When the two beakers collide of chemicals and the fizzing is happening internally, that's normal. That's going to happen. How do I manage that situation? So I found that analogy really helpful to not like beat myself up for feeling the wrong things or for like not being confident and not being brave and being like, yeah, sometimes I'm scared. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes I feel like crap. Like, that's okay. That's not me. That's not a character flaw. That's just a normal chemical reaction that got kicked off inside my system. That's okay. And I have a set of things I do to kind of manage and let that reaction fizz out. So those are the two situations that you want to kind of build your playbook for. And I just wanted to kind of neutralize, right, that second scenario of like, this chemical reaction is going to happen. You are going to have fight or flight reactions for the rest of your life. You're going to go into a stress state. You're going to have fight or flight reactions, no matter how much coaching and meditation and yoga and everything that you do, you're still going to have those reactions. That's normal. That's part of being a human being. But that's why your playbook has to have these two categories in it, right? Okay, so now let me kind of give you a full breakdown of my playbook, and this can also help you build your playbook. So I'm going to go down, so on my preventative category. So these are the things that I do to try to prevent or reduce the amount of times my brain even goes into fight or flight or goes into stress. From the top down perspective, so new thoughts I put into my brain. I have one thought that I've been exercising a lot. So by the way, I have a little like note on my phone that I use for just some planning and some tracking. And whatever thought that I'm trying to focus on and that I'm trying to put into my brain, I usually put that thought right at the top of the note. And so different thoughts have cycled in over many, many years, many thoughts I've kind of put in there, but I like to kind of keep something up there so that I know this is the thought I'm trying to focus my brain on, right? And this is the top-down preventative intervention that I'm focused on right now. So right now, the main thought that I'm focused on is, if success was guaranteed, what would you do? I love that thought. It occurred to me over Thanksgiving. And I just was like, I freaking love this thought. It's like, and I apply it all over the place. I just peanut butter, apply it to like friend situations, work situations, family situations. I'm constantly applying it everywhere. Right. And so that's the one thought. This is from a preventative perspective, right? So to prevent my brain from going into fight or flight, that's my number one top-down intervention right now, is I just keep that thought in my brain. If success was guaranteed, what would I do? Right. And I just apply it everywhere I go. So that's top-down preventative. That's one of my things. In terms of bottoms up, so doing something physical, right, to kind of get my brain out of stress and back into flow, or to prevent it from even going into stress in the first place. Mine is very simple. My preventative one, I try to take a walk every day. That's it. That's my workout regimen right now. I'm sure many of you listening have way better, way more intense workout regimens than I do, but that's it. That's all. I try to take a walk. I maybe do this 80% of the time, but I've actually, as I was planning for the new year, I put that in as like a non-negotiable into my calendar, because I was like, it's so helpful. It's so helpful. It really prevents my brain from like spiraling out, because it's, for me, like taking that walk is a time where like stuff just gets processed, right? Like there's a level of processing that I feel like I can't quite do in my brain that has to happen physically. And so just taking that walk, no matter how I'm feeling, even if I'm not at all stressed whatsoever, just take that walk. And I feel like it just clears the queue, right? Of like my mental and emotional queue. And it like prevents me from going into fight or flight or kind of getting too sensitive. So bottoms up, preventative, take a walk every day. Super simple, right? None of these are complicated. So far I've given you one thought and one 30-minute walk, right? That's on my playbook. In terms of outside in terms of environment design for myself, what I do preventatively is just keep my surroundings really clean, really tidy. Again, that's not like a moral judgment, right? It's just, that's what works for my brain. My brain tends to not like clutter. It gets stressed out. It gets distracted. And so I keep things very clean, very tidy. And then when I'm at my parents' house right now, I really kind of made sure that my workstation set up at my parents' house is pretty much exactly the same as what it is in my apartment. It's like, maybe it's fussy of me, right? Maybe I'm high maintenance, but it's one of those like environment design things where I'm like, if this is set up, then I just don't have to think about it and I can relax, and it's a stressor that's removed, and it like prevents me from like, getting flared up about other things. Cause it's like, I have my computer, I have my monitor, I have my keyboard, I have everything set up exactly how it is in my apartment. So it feels very seamless, right? So that's an outside in environment design thing that I do preventatively to keep my brain out of fight or flight. When it comes to wraparound and mindfulness meditation, I actually don't do anything preventatively with this. I use it curatively when my brain is flared up, when I'm in fight or flight. I do a lot of mindfulness, but I don't do anything preventatively. I don't have a like daily meditation practice or anything like that. It can be a great thing to do. I know a lot of people that do that, just not something I have in my kind of preventative column. And then when it comes to do it now, which is just actions that I take to keep my brain out of fight or flight, sort of preventatively. The biggest one for me is my morning routine. It is pretty non-negotiable. It's very boring. I do the same set of things every day. I even if I'm like on vacation or, on a holiday or whatever, I still kind of have the same rundown. It's very simple. I make my bed, brush my teeth, do my mouthwash, like wash my face, take a shower, right? It's very simple. It's not complicated, but it's something that kind of keeps me very calm and anchored, is to do the same set of actions in the same order every single morning, non-negotiable, even if I don't have to, right? I still do all of them. And that's something that just like keeps me calm, keeps me grounded. So those are my kind of preventative interventions, right? That's my mini playbook for keeping myself out of fight or flight. Is I apply the thought, if success was guaranteed, what would I do? I take a walk every day. I set up my workstation and my environment to be exactly how I want it to be, and I keep it neat and tidy, and I have a morning routine. Super simple, right? Not complicated. What was most helpful was actually articulating it for myself and being like, these are really non-negotiables. This is what helps keep me in a good headspace. So that's my preventative side of the score. And then the curative side, right? So when my brain inevitably has a fight or flight reaction, right? When something kicks off and stresses me off or makes me feel overwhelmed or makes me feel stupid or whatever it might be, it happens. It's going to happen all day long, right? At some point, it's going to kick off, certainly every week, if not every day. Something is going to kick off some level of reaction inside me. No questions asked. So what do I do in those situations? My playbook then, I use the bottoms up and I take a walk, right? Or I do a little dance party. So I get out of my seat, I get away from my laptop, and I move my body physically, right? That helps. That doesn't necessarily cure everything, but it helps to just kind of process the emotions, get it out of my system. So that's one big one. On the wraparound side, this is where I do what I do a lot curatively, is you can think of it, I don't necessarily sit down and do a mindfulness meditation. I'll more just sort of do it in my head, where I will really step aside and be like, I am watching this chemical reaction play out right now. And I'll literally imagine myself like as if I'm on the other side of like a wall of glass, right? And I'm watching this chemical reaction and I'm like, yep, here's the thoughts, here's the emotions, here's the scenarios, here's what's playing out right now. But I am the neutral observer. I am watching this play out. I'm not adding more beakers of chemicals on top of it and agreeing with everything my brain's telling me and making the reaction bigger and bigger. I'm also not trying to like suppress the reaction and like, tamp it down or close my eyes. I'm just like, this is happening. Okay. They're just going to watch it play out, right? And by the way, I did used to practice this. I did used to have more of a mindfulness meditation practice where I would practice kind of going into this observer position so that I was like ready to do it when I was like more flared up. I don't do that anymore, but that can be really helpful, is to get some practice reps when you are not super emotionally flared up, because it can be easier to step into that neutral observer position when you're not super flared up. And then that you kind of have the reps to be able to do that even when you are flared up. But for me personally, that's a huge like curative one, is to kind of say, okay, I'm going to step outside. I'm going to watch this chemical reaction play out. I'm going to let it fizzle and bubble. I'm just going to watch it. And then usually it's gone pretty fast. It doesn't last too long for me. And then my big do it now, if I'm kind of in a fight or flight state, if I'm amped up, is I talk it out with someone else. I will either call my mom or I will drop a voice note to my coach, right? And a lot of times I don't even end up sending the voice note because I just needed to talk it out. And then like I clear everything from my mind and I figure out what I want to do about it. But that's kind of my category of when I'm flared up, right? When I can feel the fight or flight chemical reaction happening inside me. I couldn't prevent it from happening, so it's happening. I will take a walk, I'll dance, I'll kind of move physically. I will go into the neutral observer position. I'll watch the chemical reaction fizzle out. I'll talk it out with someone else. And then I will apply that thought again of like, if success was guaranteed, what would I do? So I apply that thought preventatively and also curatively. I find it really effective for like a curative scenario as well, right? Because my mind will be like freaking out about something essentially, right? It'll be kind of flared up and threatened by a scenario. But when I apply the thought, well, okay, if success was guaranteed, then how would you handle this scenario? That tends to calm my brain down and say, oh, well, if success was guaranteed, this is how I'd handle the scenario. And so then that also calms my brain down. So that's my personal playbook, right? Of the 5 different types of interventions, and then how I use them in the preventative scenario and how I use them in the curative scenario. So I've kind of given you my overview, and I want you to try to do this for yourself, right? Like first, even just this like overall ideas, 2 overall ideas, which is 1, the headspace that you are in matters more than the actions that you're taking. Right? So stop being on a quest for actions. Stop looking for someone to tell you what to do. I don't think that's the magic ingredient. The magic ingredient is your headspace and you being in a calm, non-fight or flight, non-threatened headspace where you are in your power, where you're feeling powerful and capable and competent and confident. If you're in that headspace, your brain will generate the right actions for that situation, right? It will generate the best possible actions, and it will also be able to iterate and improve on those actions when you're in that headspace. So just the power and the importance of being in that non-fight or flight, non-threatened, secure headspace. That's thing number 1. Thing number 2, I want you to realize is you have control over that, right? There are specific toggles that you can apply to yourself that can help you both prevent your brain from going into fight or flight, as well as pull your brain back out, right? When it does inevitably still go into fight or flight, you have control over this. This is not something that happens to you. This is not something that you are at the mercy of the world or of your brain or the random whims of what happens. You have control over this. You may not have perfect control, but you have a lot of freaking control. You have more control than you think. You have so much control over this. And then the third thing I wanted to give you was this template for how you can make your own playbook, right? Which is like the 5 types of interventions: top down, new thoughts and new perspectives; bottoms up, changing the physical state of your body, doing something with your body; outside in, environment design; wrap around, mindfulness meditation, separating yourself from your thoughts, neutrally observing them; and then do it now, concrete actions that you can take. So those 5 categories of interventions. And then the 2 types of scenarios: preventative scenarios, where you do this just to keep your baseline nice and high, to prevent your brain from going into fight or flight in the first place. And then curative scenarios, which is when your brain inevitably goes into fight or flight, when inevitably this little chemical reaction starts inside you. These are the things you do to kind of let it fizzle out safely and then get yourself back into flow and back into security. So that's what I wanted to map out for you. I think I've given you everything you need to make this playbook for yourself. So take your time. I'm sure your brain is already bubbling over with ideas of things in all these categories and all these 2 scenarios, things that you can do, but jot it down, write it down for yourself so that you can rely on it when you need it. I often find when my brain is really flared up, I can't remember anything, right? And so I need it written down somewhere so I can go and remember what the heck I'm supposed to do. So write it down for yourself, make this little playbook. This is so small and compact. You could literally fit this on an index card, right, for yourself. And so write this down for yourself. And then also I want to tell you, this is something we can work on together. I work on this with lots of my clients, literally developing these playbooks for themselves so that they can really keep themselves in the sharp headspace that they want to stay in, and they can quickly and effectively pull themselves out so we can do even more customization. This is something we can work on together. And shoot me an email if you're curious, if you're more about this, if you would want a workshop on this to go more into detail, if you want a workbook and more resources. This is a topic I love talking about. And I think developing these kinds of simple playbooks for yourself is so powerful and also so simple, right? Because if you can keep your brain in that kind of secure, non-fight or flight headspace for more and more time every day, you would be shocked not only how much more you can get done, how much better work you can do, but also how much better you feel, how much better your relationships are. Like the ROI on this is so, so high. And developing a playbook like this is so simple, like not that complicated. You probably have a lot of the information you already need to just develop it. You just need to crystallize it and then put it somewhere where you can see it. So shoot me an email. You can email me at pooja@poojavcoaching.com if you want to hear more about this, you want me to put together more resources on this. And then book a free coaching consult. If you're interested in working together, we can talk about how we can build and implement this type of playbook in your life. It applies certainly for inflection points when you're leveling up, but also for decision points. Because I find that one of the big blockers for people making a clear-headed decision is that their system is in fight or flight, right? And so then their brain keeps spinning and overthinking instead of like calmly evaluating and deciding what they want to do. And it certainly applies in transition points as well, as you're navigating the transition from one role to another, or from a corporate job to launching your own venture or whatever it might be. It's going to kick your system into fight or flight all the time. I've experienced this a lot as a business owner myself. And so having that skill set of being able to notice when you're in an ineffective headspace and toggle yourself out of it, as well as have these preventative guardrails for yourself so you go into fight or flight less and less, so incredibly helpful and necessary for living a life of aligned ambition, leveling up, making clear decisions, transitioning to where you want to go. So definitely shoot me a note if you want to hear more about this, and book a free coaching consult if you want to work together on this. All the links are in the episode description. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Aligned Ambition podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and share this podcast with anyone you know that you think could use it. If you'd like to explore working together in a one-on-one coaching engagement with me, book a free consult call at poojavcoaching.com/contact. You can grab that link in the episode description. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or topics you want me to cover in this podcast, shoot me an email at pooja@poojavcoaching.com. You can grab that in the episode description too. Talk to you soon.